If you've never seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, then the story of the new movie Nosferatu might feel fresh to you, but that doesn't make it any less of a haunting tale about our fanged, shriveled-up Romanian doing what he does best. More importantly, it yet again showcases Bill Skarsgård's incredible acting range, whether he's clowning around or becoming an old wrinkly dude inside of a coffin. He makes a life-changing transformation for every role. Welcome to First Time Watching. Please like and subscribe as we dive straight into the explanation. A girl is praying that please, anybody come to her aid, come to her and help her. And her call is answered. She has awakened someone from his eternity of darkness. He lures her outside towards him. He asks her to swear to be his one and only. She swears, and while under his spell, the decomposing creep assaults her. Years later, she wakes up. Her name is Ellen, by the way. She calls out to Thomas, her husband. She tells him she had a bad dream and wants some morning action. But Thomas has to get to work and has no time for a quickie. The year is 1838, in some forgotten place in Germany. Thomas works as a real estate agent, and his boss has some great news for him. His boss tells him that a married man has to earn a wage that can provide for his wife's needs. And while on the topic of needs, he makes some remarks that might come across as sexual about Thomas's hot new wife. The boss has a job for Thomas. He has a deal ready with a wealthy foreign count who is old and wishes to retire in their city. He already has selected a beautiful place for the old rich fart to rot away called Gronwald Manor. It's an old garbage heap, but the man requested something outdated. There is just one catch. He requested someone to travel to him with the paperwork, and this man lives in a different country somewhere, in a quiet little mountain town called Transylvania. Thomas asks why he doesn't sign the paperwork when he arrives, but his boss says it's much too important to wait, and the Count insists they offer him an agent in the flesh. The Count will reward him handsomely, and if he manages to get the old bag of bones to sign the contract, that will help Thomas grow into a new and better position. Thomas asks his boss the Count's name, to which he answers Orlok. He runs home to tell his wife the great news that after just getting married, she will not see any action for at least 6 weeks. He already arranged that his buddy Harding will take care of his wife till he returns. Ellen is angry with him and tells him he cannot leave. She dreamed about marrying death, and she felt happy. This makes her cry, and she expects Thomas to console her, even though she just told him that she was happy to cheat on him last night in her dreams. Thomas tells her to never speak of such things ever again, but she keeps telling him that that dream was a bad omen. He tells her that he wants to provide a good and wealthy life for her, while she keeps trying to convince him that she's not in it for the money. Since this is the 1800s, he doesn't care about what she wants, and they get in a carriage towards Harding's house. They arrive at Harding's place, and while the women mingle amongst each other, the men drink and smoke while they talk about their success. Harding tells his buddy that him and his wife Anna are expecting their third child. Thomas asks his dear friend to please watch over his wife because he fears that her past melancholy might be returning. But it's bedtime, so that leaves Thomas and Ellen some time alone to practice baby-making amongst themselves. That night, while Thomas is fast asleep, Ellen is making something for him to remember her by. She has a locket, and in it she puts a lock of her own hair. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Thomas's boss is sitting butt naked, surrounded by candles. He is communicating with his lordship, telling him that the one he promised will be with him soon, while he shall remain here near the object of his contract. The following morning, just as Thomas is about to leave, his wife gives him the locket she made for him. They give each other a smooch as he rides off towards Transylvania, and that horse must have legs of steel, because 1,144 kilometers or 710 miles for the Americans later, he arrives. Thomas receives a welcome from the townspeople, and they all laugh in his face. The town's spokesperson that doesn't know a lick of German, just like Thomas, because for some reason he has been speaking English establish this entire movie. He urges Thomas to leave and not speak of Castle Orlok. But there is one language both of them know, and that's money. And Thomas brought enough to grant him some hospitality. But he is not the only person that tries to warn Thomas. The village granny begs him to please not go to the castle. She tells him to beware of his shadow. The shadow covers you in a nightmare. There is no escape from his grasp. Thomas wakes up in the middle of the night, and when he looks out of the window, he can see the townspeople hauling a naked chick on a horse through town as if they are going to perform a sacrificial ceremony. They are taking her towards the vampire's grave, and then they stab her. Thomas squeaks like a little girl, and everybody gives him the stink eye. That's when he wakes up from his nightmare. That morning, the town is abandoned. They even took his horse. Thomas makes the long trek into the mountains towards Orlok's castle. After a while inside the forest, a carriage with horses comes charging towards him and turns to give him a lift. They could have picked him up at the village, but at least it's something. Once he enters the castle grounds, the Count is waiting for him. He bitches and moans about Thomas being late. The midnight hour has already passed. Thomas joins the Count in his creepy-looking fireplace room. The Count wants to waste no time and wants to start looking at the paperwork right away. Thomas is still pretty upset about his girlie on the horse dream and asks the Count about gypsy rituals, but the Count is not in the mood for small talk and yells at him to not speak of it again. He then commands Thomas to eat, and as he proceeds to cut bread, he asks him if he is married. Thomas cuts his finger, and the Count immediately warns him to be very careful in what he does. He tells him he might ease his wound and invites him to join him at the fire. Meanwhile, in Germany, Ellen and Anna are taking a stroll, and Ellen asks Anna if she also sometimes feels like she is not alive, but just a doll, and that someone or something has the power to breathe life into you, to move you, as if something is at play. Anna calls it God, but Ellen tells her no, and asks her if it ever calls to her, urges her. Anna does not relate to her ramblings, so Ellen apologizes and tells her that she is lost without her Thomas. The next morning, Thomas wakes up on the floor in front of the fireplace. He searches the abandoned castle for the Count and finds a room with a mirror. His chest is killing him, so he decides to take a look and finds bite marks near his heart. That night, the Count has scribbled up a contract of his own in the language of his forefathers. He wants Thomas to sign it. When he sees the locket that Ellen made for Thomas, the Count asks him if he may take a look at it. Thomas gives it to him, but he becomes a little too possessive with it. He tells Thomas that he is fortunate with his love and urges him to sign the documents. And while the Count takes out a large bag of coins, Thomas nervously signs the contract he is unable to read the terms and conditions of. The Count is happy and starts walking off, while Thomas, maybe a little unsubtle in his approach, announces that he is planning to leave as soon as possible because he has been having terrible nightmares ever since he arrived. The Count tells him no, because it is a bad omen to journey in poor health. The Count leaves the room, leaving Thomas dumbfounded because the old perv stole his locket. Thomas wakes up again as if waking up from a nightmare with fresh bite marks on his chest. He runs through the castle in a panic in search of a way out, but instead, deep inside the castle's basement, he finds a coffin. He opens it and finds the Count sleeping. He picks up a pickaxe, thinking about killing him, but the Count wakes up, grabs the pick, and throws it away. He stands up butt naked and dick swinging. Thomas runs away as fast as he can. The Count whispers into Ellen's locket. He whispers that her husband is lost to her. He commands her to dream of him, and only him. Meanwhile, Ellen is dreaming of him and walking in her sleep. The Count's shadow finds Thomas and forces him to come closer. He feeds on the poor bastard while showing him visions of his wife. Harding has called the doctor to check on Ellen's sleepwalking. He mentions that sleepwalking can be a side effect of consuming too much blood. He recommends Harding to keep an eye on her. She should be fine, but if not, he can always tie her to the bed. While the men are standing there, Ellen talks in her sleep. She moans, "Ah, he is coming to me. He's coming." Sounds like she is having a sexy dream, so the doc makes her sniff some more of the sleepy juice. Thomas wakes up bloodied and the Count's dogs run towards him, so he jumps out of the window into the castle's moat. Ellen is losing her shit because she hasn't heard from Thomas for a while now, and Harding can't seem to reach him either. But Harding is even more done with Ellen's eternal whining and tries everything to shut her up, even if that means he will have to spend some cash to find Thomas's boss, because that guy has has been missing for some time as well. And just when Harding thinks he can finally be with his wife in peace, Ellen needs to hog the spotlight again by having some type of epileptic episode. In another town not so far away, the doctor's assistant just brought in a new patient. They found him on a market, eating a sheep raw. He locked him in a dungeon, and the doctor joins him to check on the madman. It is Thomas's boss. The doctor tries to figure out who this strange man is, but he just calls himself his servant. He is collecting animals, which he calls gifts. His lordship likes the pretty ones, he tells the doctor. Then he bites off the head of a pigeon. He tells them that he is coming. He was chosen to serve him. He tells the doctor that he shall bring curses and plague. He shall devour them all. The guy attacks the doctor in the name of his lordship. Meanwhile, Ellen is shaking uncontrollably again, and her doctor tells Harding that Thomas's boss has been found. He is at the hospital right now, but he has lost his mind. He mumbles the exact same thing as Ellen does during her episodes, that he is coming. The doctor recommends to call in an expert on the subject, his old teacher, von Franz. But the doctor has been apprehensive about asking him for help, because von Franz has been thrown out of his university and was laughed at by his colleagues. His reputation is destroyed because he became obsessed with the dark alchemical arts. In Romania, a woman finds Thomas next to the river and brings him to her order of gypsy grannies. They perform a healing ritual on him and tell him he should stay with them because his grasp cannot reach inside their church. But Thomas insists he has to leave because Orlok wants to have his wife. He steals a horse to make the long trek back to his hometown. On a boat towards Germany, there is a sealed box. In it is Orlok, and he whispers to her that soon he shall be more than just a shadow. Soon they shall be one. The crew falls ill. They believe their cargo is cursed. After many deaths, one of the crew members decides to take matter into his own hands. He takes an axe and goes below deck to check the mysterious box. But when he breaks it open, it is filled with rats. Orlok is behind him and sucks him dry. The doctor is taking Harding to von Franz. He is a recluse, a loner. He is happy to see his old student again. Von Franz is intrigued by the symptoms and wants to check it out for himself. As she is now clear of mind, von Franz is able to ask her a few questions. She has had these nightmares and epileptic attacks since she was a child. He would like to know all about them. Ellen tells him that they are like dreams that show her things she shouldn't know. She would always know the contents of her Christmas gifts before receiving them. She knew exactly when her mother would come to pass. But as she became older, her dreams worsened. She became so very afraid, and she longed for company, for a touch. He appeared to her in the night, in her nightmares, until her father found her one night in a field fully unclothed. Sin, he said. But all of that ended when she met her Thomas. But now, the visions have returned and grown darker. That night, he wants to study her during one of her episodes. He explains that she is no longer present. Her body is in the room, but her soul is now somewhere else. He asks the husk that is with them to tell him what she sees. Ellen tells him that he is spreading his shadow. He is coming. Her body starts to shake uncontrollably and does the exorcist pose. As von Franz chants his hymns that he has learned in his extensive studies, Ellen shows that she is indeed possessed by someone or something. She recites the promise made long ago, I shall persist to join you every night, first in sleep, then in your arms. Everything will be mixed with abomination, and you'll be knee-deep in blood. Everyone will cry. There will be none to bury the dead. You are promised to me. It is as von Franz predicted. She is cursed. She is possessed by an evil spirit. He believes that this demon took a hold of her at a young age, but how he cannot yet say. At the hospital, our crazy boss is screaming for help. He is foaming from the mouth, and as he bites the person that tries to help him in the neck, he tells him that his lordship has arrived. He breaks out of the hospital and runs into the streets to greet his master. Ellen knows it as well. She feels his presence, but he is not the only one who made it. Thomas is also back home. He musters up the little strength he has to tell his wife that Orlok has her locket. There is a knock at the door. Harding opens, and it's the police. Now Harding owns the shipyard, and a ship has just crashed into the docks. The ship was filled with rats, so Harding calls it a plague ship. ship. Meanwhile, Thomas's loony boss has already taken the most important cargo of said ship. He guides Count Orlok and his coffin to his new home. Once he arrives in his new crib, he informs his servant that the groom lives, but he still has use for him, as the contract commands that she must willingly repledge her vow. She cannot be stolen. As dawn breaks, the city is infested with rats. Ellen sits by Thomas's bedside while she asks her friend Anna for an audience with von Franz. Thomas clearly saw something, and she needs to warn him of what is about to happen. But von Franz is visiting the hospital because the doctor wanted to show him the bodies they found on the crashed ship. They show all signs of the plague, except for one. They are entirely drained of blood, and the size of the jaw marks on the body are bigger than any rat they have ever encountered. Von Franz demands they find the lunatic who escaped last night as soon as possible, as this is no mere plague. The sun sets, and Orlok awakens. He stretches his shadow over the town to reach out to the Harding house. Anna is putting the kids to bed when she gets a visit from an unexpected guest. Ellen appears behind her and asks to stay with her tonight. Von Franz calls the doctor and Harding back to his place of research to tell them what is among them is not the plague. It acts like the plague, but it has a physical form. It is death itself. The creature they are dealing with is none other than the vampire Nosferatu. While Anna is asleep, Ellen wakes up and starts sleepwalking again. She is called towards the window, and as she opens it, she grants entrance for Nosferatu into the Harding home. Ellen tells him that she can't seem to get rid of him, but he explains that it is the other way around. While he was laying in the depths of darkness, she was the one who called out to him, that freed him, and now they are fated together. He tells her that her husband has signed a contract in which he promised her to him for but a single sack of gold. He absolved his marriage with her for just one single sad sack of gold. But for the marital agreements to be officially nullified, it has to be agreed upon by her, fully of her own free will. She does not believe him, as he has lied to her before. He tells her that she is bound to him. Her love and passion are bound to him, and only him, to which she replies that he cannot love, and he agrees. Yet he cannot be satisfied without her, but she rejects him. And since this old shriveled-up bag of bones isn't great with rejection, he grants her 3 nights. Tonight was the first one, and because she has denied herself his glorious love-making skills, he will take the lives of the ones she loves. And upon the 3rd night, she will submit, or he who she calls her husband shall perish by his hand. With that, she wakes up in a puddle of her own sweat and tears. Next to her on the floor, rats are feeding on the baby inside of Anna's body, as Nosferatu reminds Ellen that she has just 2 more nights. Anna is infected with the plague, and she is slowly spiraling while Harding tries to keep it together. Ellen tries to warn Harding of what's more to come, but he is not able to process what is happening fast enough, and he wants Ellen and Thomas to leave his house immediately. She tries to warn him that all of them are going to die, his wife, him, his children, but he will hear no more of it. Meanwhile, von Franz and the doctors search Thomas's boss, his office, for signs of his bond to Nosferatu. They find the pentagram drawn on the floor and their codex of secrets. Ellen and Thomas stumble home, but as they walk through the streets, they are confronted with famine and death. The plague is taking lives on a rapid rate. Von Franz and the doctor return to Harding's house to see Ellen, but she has left. Franz is convinced she is the key to destroying Nosferatu, but Harding calls poppycock, and Franz agrees he indeed has no clue how to beat the demon, as all the texts and stories about him differ per region, except for one detail. In all stories, he has to retreat to his grave before the sun rises. Harding demands they leave his house, so they leave, but not without warning. The night demon has tasted his wife's blood, and he shall return for her. Ellen is taking care of her husband, who is still recovering from his long travels, but he tells his wife they have to leave right now. She tells him they can't. She has to tell him something he will find hard to believe, but he insists that there is nothing that will shake him after what he saw in Transylvania. He met a devil there, and he is coming all the way to their small town all for her. She answers that she knows. She knows him inside. She has kept this secret for a long time, but there was a time when she sought company. She sought tenderness, and she called out. At first, it was sweet, but then it turned to torture, and she feared he would kill her. But Thomas was the one that gave her the courage to be free of her promiscuous past. Nosferatu Nosferatu is her shame, her melancholy. He was her lover back when he was a little less rotten, and now he has come back to take what was his. He stalks her in her dreams. All her sleeping thoughts are of him, but Nosferatu's words are in the back of her head. He told her that Thomas sold her for a bag of gold. She warned him that she was no gold digger from the start, but he so desperately needed more money, a promotion, a bigger house. As she speaks, the words that they should have never gotten married because they are already dead, her body starts to shake uncontrollably. She destroys her dress and then stops shaking. She foams from the mouth as her soul leaves her body. As Thomas is about to leave the room to call the doctor, she screams. No, she crawls towards him and tells him that Thomas would never be able to please her as he could. Damn, that's sexy. If that doesn't get you in the mood, then nothing will. At least for our simp Thomas. That was the trigger. He takes his wife and performs the disappearing salami on her. She is on this quest to show Nosferatu how much they love each other, but he is haunted by visions of Ellen covered in blood. In a possessed rage, she calls out that she will turn into a demon without him. Thomas tells her that he loves her, and that finally snaps her out of it. She begs him to keep away because she is unclean, but he tells her never. He will stay with her till the end. She believes that if she doesn't go to him, that Nosferatu will kill everybody. But Thomas tells her that he won't let him hurt her again. He will kill Nosferatu. Franz reads the secret codex, and there finds a way to save the townspeople from the curse of Nosferatu. To beat him, the maiden fair will have to offer herself up to the beast and lay with him. They will do the nasty until the sun rises. Her willing sacrifice is the only way to break the curse. On the other side of town, Harding is a heavy sleeper because he clearly did not notice Nosferatu entering his home and feeding on the blood of his wife and kids. Apparently, funerals happen instantly in the 1800s Germany, but Harding isn't happy to see the woman who he holds to blame for the death of his family on their funeral. Thomas calms him down by showing the bite marks, thus convincing him that the demon they are facing is indeed real. Franz proposes a plan to the group. He believes that Orlok's coffin will be kept safely inside his newly bought manor, and he rallies the troops because tonight they plan to destroy the beast. Ellen wants to join them, but Thomas forbids her from coming. She has to be kept away from Orlok. Franz explains his plan to sanctify the earth beneath the manor and destroy his coffin so that he will have no sanctuary when the sun rises. And then Thomas will deliver the final blow, a spike through his heart. Now, with the plan made, they will all have to rest, so they drop Franz off at his home. Ellen offers to walk him to his door so they can have a moment in private. Ellen tells Franz that she is aware that she is the only one who can end Nosferatu's curse, so Franz wishes her good luck, as he believes truly that nothing they do will be enough to kill the vampire. He promises her to keep her husband busy tonight. She should help him prepare for his false hunt. Back at home, Ellen makes Thomas promise not to return until he has made sure Orlok is dead, and he promises. That night, as the guys get together to execute their plan, Harding does not show up. He's at the mausoleum to mourn his wife, his daughters, and his unborn son. He opens his wife's casket and engages in some light necrophilia to infect himself with the plague to commit suicide. Thomas, the doctor, and von Franz make their way towards Orlok's castle, while Ellen opens her window and bids the demon to come to her. The men enter the room with the coffin. It is filled with rats. They open the coffin, and Thomas immediately stabs the stake in the heart, except it's not Orlok inside the coffin. It is Thomas's old boss. With his final breath, he claims that the demon promised him immortality, but instead, after he got everything he wanted, he only wanted his pretty bride. Not granting him immortality, he left him to die. While Franz does his best to distract Thomas further, the young man knows now that the only thing Orlok craves is his wife. Franz tells Thomas that his wife is the only one who is able to end the curse. He tells Thomas that he is too late. He is already with her. Thomas runs home while Franz laughs and burns the coffin. Orlok arrives in Ellen's bedroom. He asks her if she accepts their contract out of her own free will, and she accepts, which means they can finally get jiggy again. After all this time, the two of them undress, and he penetrates her with his rotten meat stick. He bites her and sucks her blood, and they make love till the sun rises. He notices the sun, but he can't stop himself as she invites him to keep on drinking more of her blood. He looks into the sun as she embraces him. Orlok dies on top of her. and she with him. Just as Thomas arrives home, he can see the final breath of life disappear from his wife. And that's a wrap. It is a story retold many times, so it's hard to make it original. But that should not take away from the fact that Nosferatu had some amazing acting. The person that designed Orlok's costume deserves an Oscar of its own. And although it's not really a scary movie, it is definitely worth the watch.